Michael Douglas and Diandra, Douglas's ex-wife, split up 10 years ago in what was one of the most expensive Hollywood divorces of all time. Now they're back in court, battling over his future earnings. Here's Ashley Banfield.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
They were famous, if not haunting, words from the 1987 blockbuster hit Wall Street. Michael Douglas as Gordon Gekko, a role that earned him an Oscar and millions of dollars. But he lost a big chunk of that in a $45 million divorce settlement with his ex-wife Diandra 10 years ago.
Why don't you start calling me Gordon?
Fast forward 22 years to the new Wall Street movie and another big payday for Michael Douglas, who's now worth an estimated $212 million. But even though he's remarried to Catherine Zeta-Jones, Diandra is back, claiming under their divorce deal, she's owed half of what he'll earn from the brand new movie.
He got an Academy Award 22 years ago, and she ought to get an Academy Award for chutzpah.
It all comes down to the language in the deal. Diandra says a specific clause they agreed to entitles her to half of the proceeds from any spin-off of movies Douglas made before they divorced. And that includes Wall Street. But Douglas says the new Wall Street is no spin-off. It is a sequel. And the two are very different.
Talk to entertainment attorneys and they will tell you that, generally speaking, a sequel takes a storyline and moves it into a new time frame, using one or more of the same characters, like Gordon Gekko 2 decades later. But that a spin-off takes a character, or some characters, and moves them into a brand new storyline, like Happy Days and Joni Loves Chachi. Still confused? Maybe this'll help.
A spin-off is generally associated with a TV show. A sequel would be language that's more commonly used for a movie.
A New York judge has hinted so far he sees that distinction, but first must decide if the case belongs in California, where the divorce was first settled.
If her judgment provides that she's entitled to more, that's what they bargained for.
I think the law's against her. I think the facts are against her. And most of all, she comes off with a big G. She comes off greedy.
But that all depends on whether greed is good. For Good Morning America, Ashley Banfield, ABC News.
And joining me now are two attorneys who have a lot of experience in helping clients determine how to divide up money and marital assets. Steve Mindel specializes in family law and joins us from Los Angeles. And Jimmy Nguyen specializes in entertainment law and is here with us in the studio. Gentlemen, good morning to you both. And Steve, I would like to start with you first of all. A lot of people were surprised that 10 years after collecting in one of the most expensive divorces in history, taking $45 million home, that an ex-wife can come back and say, I get to have more.
Don't be surprised. This is a common occurrence in California. You see this every day of the week. The bottom line answer here is just going to be, does she get a piece of Michael Douglas's celebrity goodwill? In California, we don't recognize celebrity goodwill. In New York, they do. So it's going to be an interesting battle between California and New York.
How common is it to have a clause in a divorce like this one that we're talking about future earnings from a spin-off or a sequel? How common is that in at least Hollywood?
In California, you wouldn't see that provision very often because generally a spin-off would be something to do with some continuing interest in the property, for instance, a celebrity goodwill type situation. So it would be very uncommon to see that.
Jimmy, we just heard this talk in Ashley Banfield's piece about spin-off versus sequel. It seems to be a matter of, actually, it's not a matter of parsing words. They have two very different meanings, don't they?
Absolutely. I think if you ask any Hollywood expert or even a moviegoer on the street, they think of a spin-off very differently than a sequel. Neither are legal terms, but any Hollywood lawyer who is good about writing these contracts would list prequels, sequels, remakes, other examples of a legal concept called derivative works under copyright law.
In all the press leading up to Wall Street 2, which is named Wall Street 2 perhaps for a reason, it seems to be portrayed as a sequel and not a spin-off.
Absolutely. All the press describes it as a sequel. It's got the same main character, Michael Douglas, as Gordon Gekko, picking up 20-plus years after the first movie, continuing his story. I think most Hollywood experts and I think most judges or juries would reach the conclusion that this is a sequel, not a spin-off. And Diandra Douglas's main legal problem is her contract only says spin-off for whatever reason. That's a bit of a shock and a mystery to me.
So you think she's not going to succeed in this?
I would say not. I think that there is a reason it says spin-off, that it's pretty surprising because you're dealing with a movie actor, Michael Douglas, and spin-offs usually relate to TV series such as Frasier to Cheers. They do happen in films, but they're more rare, and I think she has a very steep wall to climb to get any money from Wall Street. Money never sleeps.
Steve, I mean, a lot of Michael Douglas's biggest movies were made while he was married to Diandra Douglas. Fatal Attraction, Romancing the Stone, War of the Roses, Basic Instinct. Does this mean he can't do a spin-off of any of those movies without paying her half of whatever he gets?
Well, that's the interesting thing. What exactly did they mean by spin-off in the document? It's an unusual term, wouldn't see it very often, and how is that going to play out? I don't think anybody could tell you at this point. I think that the bottom line answer is, what did they intend when they made the judgment? Did they intend that she was going to get a piece of his future works, in other words, some type of celebrity, a piece of his celebrity, or did they intend that all she's going to get is a piece of things that were related to the original movie Wall Street and maybe some spin-off, just as Jimmy pointed out?
But I'm just curious, is this a common thing in divorces? Did Diandra Douglas work on these movies somehow, or is this just a claim that this is something you did while we were married and therefore I'm entitled to half of it, even if you're going to work on it some more after we're divorced?
Well, that's the interesting difference in California. In California, when you're married, the things that you do during the marriage are generally community property, unless, of course, you have a premarital agreement. Many people would have a premarital agreement, as Jimmy said, to define what derivative works are and so forth. Or if they don't have a premarital agreement, when they're divorced, they're going to take a look and see what exactly do they want to make sure that the other party gets a piece of. Here, the language is really unclear, so it's not completely understood what they meant by the word spin-off.
It's ironic that this is all about a movie where of course, the most famous three words are greed is good. What about the PR aspect of this? Both Steve and Jimmy, if you could weigh in on this sense of fair play, because in these economic times, to have already taken home $45 million and to be going back to the well for more, how do you think this is going to play out? You heard Raoul Felder call it, she should get an Oscar for chutzpah.
I believe that Diandra Douglas's second problem is the atmospheric PR problem. Greed is good is very ironic in this situation. She got $45+ million in the original divorce settlement. Judges and juries ultimately like to do what they think is fair, and what the judge or jury in this case will have to look at is to answer, is it fair to give her 10 years after a divorce, more money from a movie made 20+ years ago? And in today's economic times, I think it's going to be very hard for her to fight that atmospheric battle, and I think that will be her bigger challenge even than the legal one. Steve, your last word?
Well, I was just going to say that the main issue is going to be that this is going to be duked out most likely in the family law courts. The question is the New York court going to keep this, or are they going to send it back to the California courts for resolution? If it's in the California family law courts, it's not going to be so much about the fairness of the situation. It's going to be, what did they bargain for when they reached their settlement? And that's what the court's going to strive to enforce, is what they actually bargained for, because we don't know exactly what they gave up when they reached the settlement.
All right. Steve Mindel, Jimmy Nguyen, very interesting. Thanks so much, gentlemen,
Thank
for
you.
weighing in on this morning. And what do you think? Weigh in on our shout-out board at abcnews.com/GMA.